Wow.
All right.
Um, Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Um,
It's all good. I
one of our
assume that
tabs,
maybe go on.
I would say one of our tabs was open with YouTube up, so that's why
Oh,
it's
okay.
echoing
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's okay. Technical difficulties happen. I mean, we could probably post it separately or
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, we could edit this.
yeah.
So,
That's
sorry.
Awesome.
I was jamming to the music though. Kind of the echo really worked well with
We gotta-
Sorry
the
about that.
genre of song. There's like a nice reverb going on. Anyway, yeah. So good
Wow.
evening.
Yes. Welcome to Black Collar Art House. This is a space that we've all crafted to respond to film and to invite you to do the same. So yeah, we're gonna jump straight into this discussion. Wow, what a work.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wanted to do something that's honoring Indigenous people this month. Usually in the past, like we've done films more centered on family and like themes of family or themes of feasting together. But this year we wanted to celebrate and center on just Indigenous peoples and their cultures and exploring what does Indigenous film look like. And that's how we discovered Sky Hopinka, who's a really, really interesting director. I love how he has so many like short films, like it feels very accessible. And his website too has like so many, like you can watch a lot of his work there. But I think what I found really fascinating about this particular work was just the story like attached or like the story of language and kind of keeping language. Yeah, but I know like I think when we've all like looked into him, that's like a big that's a really big deal for him. Yeah.
Yeah. When I looked into kind of the mentality that goes behind his work, one thing that he brought up was that a lot of his work are all of his work really is for his family, like for his people.
Mm,
He's very much putting out his art for the people that he grew up with and for his culture. So I really find that unique in that he's not trying to be palatable, for
yeah,
a mass audience or for I guess pop culture.
right.
But the one that we chose for today, I feel like can speak to everyone or is very informative.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so one of the things I really loved about the film was that intro.
Mm.
That sort of like riding along the street and then the title comes up,
And the title
and
changes.
it
Oh,
changes.
love that. Great detail.
I was like, wow, like why do you guys think that was chosen? Or like why do you guys think that decision was made?
What did it change to again?
It changed from like Green Bay.
Yeah, it changed from it was awesome. Okay, so the way it played out was whatever it was, Green Bay, the original name that I believe it's called by most Americans. And
Mm,
then as the grandmother is remembering it, she's like, "Oh, you mean," and then she says the name and it changes to the name of the
yeah,
title, which was
Oh,
awesome. And that just really, to me, encapsulates the entire short film, is remembering an America that um, Americans don't know about, that
mm,
most Americans don't know about. Um,
yeah, and
and
the reclamation of those words. No, we can continue. Sorry.
no, go forward.
Yeah, like in the reclamation of like names as
Yes.
well. We're like, no, like this is like the true name of this space.
mm.
Yeah, I think that's really like powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, really catch that the first time. It's good.
Yeah, that was the second time for me as well. It's really quick.
Right.
It's great. Really intentional editing design there. Um,
Yeah. So
yeah, sorry, go on,
no,
Tom.
you go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just in general, text is used very intentionally throughout the short film. There's a
Yeah.
scene where a story is being told, and you're seeing this text kind of scrolling across the screen, often like overlapping and whatnot. How would you guys react to that, or what do you think the intention was behind like that really interesting use of text?
Yeah, I love. Oh man, oh, um, you know, wow. Yeah, because all right. So remind me. This is when the text is this is the true story, or was this the true story or the fake story?
Well, the fake story of how the first European Jean something, like he came
Yeah.
to Red Bank. That was the text that we see.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I really struggled with viewing this. I really struggled with the way that it like overlapped, you know, or like I struggled to understand really what that meant. Um, I mean, I can grasp. I only got as far as it's confusion,
Hmm.
right? It's later
Disorienting.
on. I don't know. Yeah, I mean that's about as far as I got. Like confusion,
I
or maybe it's something, you know, or maybe it's something we shouldn't know, or we should lose a grasp on. I love that it's like, oh, but then there's so much. It's like the fact that it seeps in,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that it seeps in, the fact that it like overlaps and almost like creates something new.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
I,
Yeah, as if
Yeah.
like, yeah, I
I
kind of
know.
feel like that's reflective of the story in and of itself.
I would definitely agree with that analysis because I think one thing that's mentioned, I can't remember if it's in the film itself, but definitely in interviews, is that there's a deep history of like oral indigenous tradition, right? Like where they'll pass down
Mhm.
stories through speaking. And the whole idea of text being used was something that was kind of pushed upon them, because it's like,
Right.
well, this is the way you have to do it. We need to use text. So I kind of like that you brought that up, that it's almost like disorienting the way the text is used because it's like taking the story and skewing it to
Right.
yeah, the way that it's supposed to be told, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we see even more evidence of that with the fact that we get the creation story earlier, right? And we don't see any text. We hear
Mm,
his grandmother speaking it, and we look at the bank, right? And later on, the Ho Chunk chief says, like you're going to hear how you're going to see how it was told, right? Because of film, which I think, like, yeah, like there's a juxtaposition between the way text has been used and abused and harmful, like it's been used as a weapon against people. We're like, oh, the text is what we value utmost, and the text is what we remember, because it's the people who carry, the oral history. But then we also have film kind of also being this interesting response, I would say, to oral history, because something I was thinking about was like, oh, with oral history, you also have examples when you're hearing stories orally or whatever. You are also, what's intentional is, you being able to see what's happening through someone's like words, through someone's voice. And I
Right.
think we also use, what is around us, right, to help tell those stories. And I think the beauty of film, and I think something that this taps into, is that with film we get to capture the essence of oral history. And it's something that gets to live on and stay, even if those who have told the story pass on, or those who are still here remember or don't remember.
Yeah, and I do love how like sobering the yeah, I don't know, like how sobering the telling of it is too. Where he's like, this is how we're hearing it. This film is how we're hearing it at this point. In the
mm,
sense, like the story will go on
yeah.
beyond this point. Like there is no final point
Yeah.
for for this story.
Yeah,
You
you're right.
know,
It takes away this kind of like worship that we sometimes have towards film, where it's like the end all be all. Well, no, it's not.
right.
It's just an example of how we can use oral tradition, and the oral tradition itself will continue on and on. Yeah, that's awesome. Um,
So
really, he
what
uses the medium in a really great way to kind of illustrate the traditions that are separate from, how we as Americans
Yeah, like I love the image of the bank and like and how like all encompassing it is, like, and then the shore of like shells, right? There's no sand, it is just shells, and you hear like the crunching of it, and like, and you can see Mauna, like crying, and like his tears causing the river to form, and then this sort of like almost like pre-land state of like the shells. And I'm like, oh, that's so powerful. And it helped me like realize too the importance and beauty of I think of our environment, of nature, and how much it speaks to our realities. I'm like, oh, like I can totally see this creation story because I see it around me. I see it actually here, like I'm living in it. Yeah, like I think I really appreciated that, or how you use that image.
Yeah. And to kind of jump off that, what do you guys think was the intention behind opening with just this long driving scene, like kind of in the dark on a highway, Do you think there was intention?
Initially, I don't know if there's any more meanings to it, but like I thought about I don't know, like here, like, well, okay, well, I guess my first thing is like I think about hearing stories like while you're in the car, right? And like I guess listening to somebody like share a story or like just tell you about their life, but while you're in a car and you're kind of riding along this highway, and like I don't know, like that was the first thing I thought about. Wait, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm gonna go in a different direction.
Okay.
I feel finding your path in the dark. Like, there is something there is something that is, there is something that is paved. Yeah, there is something that is paved. There's something that you can be on that's tangible, but you can't see all of it. And I think it makes me think about a lot of the ways that we sort of like wrestle with identity, I mean, especially, like being Black, and we like wrestle with that, like knowing something, right? Having some place to put your foot on, but then also not necessarily being able to see the way forward or way back, right? But then the car, I mean, I feel like I'm getting like Freddie's like some
deep,
Let's
go though, see it through.
But then the car, I think about the lights of the car, right? And how the car is like, the car isn't the size of the road, right? Like the car isn't, the largest like vehicle. It merely like travels along the road and allows you to see through its lights.
Yeah, it's a vessel.
So you can see something. You can't see everything, right? But you can see something, and that gives us sort of like this way forward. And then even like, oh man, then even like the ending, right? Like the fact that he like ends like during the thunderstorm, and it's like, and now like not only are, we taking steps to light our way, but like our way is being lit for us, in a lot of ways.
Wow, I guess I had a really like pessimistic view of it. Because I know, well, when I first watched it, I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought it was a good way to open the short film. Is like, we're traveling through the dark and we're going to arrive at something, but part of me almost sees it as like, a bastardization is a strong word, but like, what has America become? A lot of it is just, dark, open highways through this land that we have claimed as our own. I mean, I'm saying we, I'm using we liberally, but, we've taken their land, we've stripped it, we've turned it into highways, and then we travel from place to place, rarely stopping to appreciate what once was or what still is, that we just don't know about. And, maybe he didn't mean it that pessimistically, but I find it an interesting juxtaposition, to go from highway to then focus on the specifics of the land and like really beautiful, like you were saying, the seashells. But what were you going to say, Tyrone?
Yeah, but I think I think all of our perspectives bring is a sort of like tension with the land, where like, there's something, there's something here, right? There was something here, it's not here anymore, but this idea of like looking back and looking forward, and how do we wrestle with like the tension of that?
No, I definitely think I definitely agree with that, because that's a thing that we see in his other short films as well. He does a lot of stuff with highways, but I think another element too is like, what is still here, right? And the focus is kind of like on the sky, right? You're kind of seeing the vastness of the sky. You're seeing like the tops of the trees. Like there is, what has been done, to the land. Like we can't ignore that. We can also see, well, what remains. And then, we have in the end, like that thunderstorm, we see all this lightning, and like the presence of, nature is still something we feel. I think especially highways. I feel like those are great examples of that. Highways were such a big moment in American history for the way that it connected all these different places. It was a great sign of modernization. But then when you're on the highway, that may be the place where you see the most sky you've ever seen in your life, And I think that like really like he kind of captures that of like you really get to see, what is here, what still remains here. But I think like he's capturing some of that tension.
Well,
yeah.
So
no, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What did you guys think of the sun flickering? Like there's a scene where you see the sun flickering back and forth.
I was like, whoa, it's getting fancy with the effects. Yeah. What was the intention behind that? Let me think on that, because I was still, even with my my second rewatch, that was still something where I was like not sure. The feeling that I got when I was first watching it was almost like a flickering between two worlds almost. Just like instead of staying in one spot, it's almost like we're flashing back and forth to something else. And for me, that kind of added to the sense of like we're going to see what this meant to a group of people that you may have never considered before, or like you're seeing this world through the eyes of someone that you've never really taken time to consider. I don't know. What did you guys think of that?
Yeah, I don't think I had. I don't think I had any thoughts.
Right, like I enjoyed it, and it definitely had like a feeling that it created, but I never really solidified like what the intention behind that was.
And
that was during the scene where he was starting to tell the story, right? Or was that just before?
He was he first.
I thought it was after you told the story.
It's after his grandmother tells the creation story, and it's right before we get the text of everything, because during that scene when the sun is flickering, you actually start to hear voices of children, and then the voices start to rise during the text, and voices of children, but also voices of people, which leads into the welcome song. Because what I was thinking, because I definitely think it's that, like this, the different suns, right, representing different times, different, different things that we're seeing from, and what we're hearing from, people that we may not have heard from. I think also like a reflection of generations, because then we also hear I think right before that, we hear the seashells, right, and them crunching. And then like I thought about, there's so many seashells, millions and millions of like seashells, like there's millions of people, right? And I think the fact that happens, or that crescendos during this, text-based encounter with with like Europeans, I think also reflected the presence, like, oh, like the people are still here, like our presence is here. I don't know. I guess I kind of feel like that's what the sun flickering led to. But yeah, definitely different suns or different risings or sunsets in the passage of time.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, like where it took place in the story too, because I think that also kind of helps. Because I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's a visual component that's adding to this like spiritual story that's being told. So I kind of took it as that. But if it was right before they tell the story of the Europeans, that flickering could almost be like evoking that feeling of unrest, or of, almost like cannon fire going off, because when we get to the story of the Europeans, that's where we get to, the problems, or the issues, the conflict. So
To put it
Um,
kindly, to put it
yeah,
nicely, some
conflict.
problems.
Yeah. Of course, not to make light of it, but yeah, that
Yeah,
could be a
yeah,
very
mm,
subtle way of kind of transitioning there between these two stories.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Mm.
What did you guys think of, or do you think there's a connection between the fact that what the Jesuits wrote about that first encounter, the Ho Chunk people thinking that the guns were like thunder, or thunder was coming out the guns,
Mm.
and the fact that we see lightning at the end of the short film, like we see, yeah.
Mm.
Wow. See, I didn't
Mm.
make that connection when I watched it, but bringing that up, it's like it's still here, right?
Mm,
That thunderous, um, fire, that violence that's inflicted, it's still here today.
mm,
Um, or you could say it's part of the land, right? It's just the same way the highway is, the same way we use it to go place to place. Um,
Yeah.
it's it's just a part of this country now.
mm.
Wow. Yeah. So. Mm.
I don't know. Maybe you guys have. I feel like I'm always going for the pessimistic route, but maybe you guys have a more
No.
different way of seeing it.
That's good. I think. Yeah. I'm not sure. Because that's tense.
Mhm.
um, like the idea that they saw that it was they believed that it was lightning coming out of their
Well, yeah,
voice.
thunder. When I double checked it, because initially I thought lightning, but they said thunder. Like the thunder was coming out of like the guns, or he held thunder in his hands.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, yeah, but I felt like initially, I mean, there's a difference between thunder and lightning, but initially I felt like this was proof of how this is not or this is false, right? Like the people know what lightning looks like, right? They how grand, how magnificent, how powerful it is.
Mm.
We're like, it's, I don't know, I felt like it was kind of attacking this idea of like simplicity, like, oh, the people are so simple, they thought that he had lightning in his hands, he was a god. But kind of like challenging that, like, no, maybe it's not that, maybe he shot somebody, and that is why they're like, okay, what's going on now?
Right.
But yeah, thunder is different, than lightning. But I kind of feel like that's what he's tapping into. But I think it's also that as well, this idea of like, what this represents and the presence still being there. We're on the highway during that scene. We're back there again, so like, yeah, we're still on this sort of man-made, structure, and still feeling the repercussions of, of the thunder, right? Or what came after the thunder.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
yeah.
That's good.
And I don't see it as like this, like woe is me or woe is us type of thing. He was very clear in his interviews that he's part of the reason the director went into the arts is to kind of show the stories as more than just, our ancestors were these great people, or our ancestors went through all this trauma. It's like, well, no, we're still here and we are still a great people, and we have our stories to tell, like our own
Right.
stories.
Yeah, and
What were you gonna say, Taryn?
yeah, it seems like he cares deeply about like perspective, like
Yeah.
merely like, or not just simply, but trying to get into the hearts and minds of his people, and sort of like reflecting that, as opposed to the stories that are told around his people.
Yeah. Yeah. So Sky Hopinka, he definitely, I don't think that he's coming at this from, like, oh, this was a terrible atrocity that was committed to us and we're still suffering from it today. But
Mhm.
I think it's more of just like it is still with us, like this is
Mhm.
a part of this nation. And I think,
Mhm.
I mean, it was really cool that he used the short film as a chance to say, okay, this is with us, but also here's the story that, was passed
Right.
down orally. This is our story.
Right.
Yeah.
I have one last question.
Mm.
And it's not fair.
Oh,
It's not, so prepare yourselves. But and this is definitely for, definitely for the chat as well.
okay.
A lot of what Skylar Pinka talks about is story, right? And this sort of idea of like, of like lost stories, of like of stories that are, that are ignored. I guess and we first came across him through we first came across him through a paywall.
Oh,
Through the Criterion collection, or the Criterion channel, which is a great service,
gotta
but
shout out to Criterion.
shout out to Criterion.
Sponsor us.
Please. But I do want to ask, you guys, like, how do you guys wrestle with like, with like access as far as like film is concerned, and whose stories get to be heard, and whose stories get to be discussed and wrestled with, and the relationship between that and like streaming services. How do you guys respond to that?
So it's worth noting that I think that in this case, Sky Hopinka, he very much tries to make his art accessible. Like, the one that we're discussing today, it's available to watch for free on his website, which we have linked on YouTube, yes. Right? Very nice. Yeah, so please make sure you check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, you're right. There's an increasing divide. Like every single distributor is making their own streaming service. So, and they're bringing all of their products to, we have Paramount Plus, Netflix is trying to do its own thing with all their specials. MTV recently, maybe not so recently, I just realized they had their own streaming service with all their stuff. Yeah.
That's pretty
yeah, so we're getting this divide where there's like a paywall for everything. And art is becoming less accessible, and to the point where it almost seems like, I wouldn't say justified to pirate things, but it almost seems like sometimes a necessity as far as preservation goes, because they're just
watch out, bro.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go too much into that. That's a whole thing. I could do a whole thing on it, but anyway, yeah. I mean, let me start off by saying I think it's wrong. I think art should be as accessible as possible. Obviously, I think that the creators should be paid. There should be, everyone involved should be rewarded for their work. This is a hard question, because it's like, how would you do it?
It really wasn't fair. But
no, because you want it to be accessible, right? You want there to be services where people can see the work.
Yeah, I think maybe an answer is that some of these bigger companies like Criterion be more okay.
Be nice with our sponsor, potential sponsor. No, I'm kidding.
Some of these bigger companies who have the money and the access to be able to, share things for free, like, even like YouTube TV, right? They or YouTube, you could find free, mostly poor movies, but they're free, right? I think that is who I think should be able to create access where we can receive, a lot of these stories and stuff that we haven't, seen before. But without it behind, and I think too, there's a conversation about film culture as well, where, I think a lot of stories that we don't get to see, like Indigenous stories, certain stories that are taking place in various countries of Africa, a lot of film in Africa, and the film history there. Yeah, African-American film, like a lot of like indie stuff, is kind of like, oh, you got to have criteria, you have to have certain services to watch, them on, right? Or you may not even really know about their existence until that point. I guess a small example, right? I didn't know about To Sleep with Anger at all. Like I didn't know anything about it until, Tyrone was looking into like Black directors and found Charles Burnett. But then I told my mom, oh, we watched this movie called Sleep with Anger. She's like, oh yeah, that movie with Danny Glover. And I'm like, how do you know this film? But she, like, I guess it was in theaters when it came out in the 90s and she saw it, but I'm like, that's so interesting that, this was kind of something that, why is it that this film didn't really like kind of like stick around in sort of like, I'll say like the Black, consciousness, right? Where like, like other films like Beloved or other films like, what Color Purple, but that was, there's stuff there. That's Spielberg. So that was pretty widespread. But like, like there are things that kind of are here, but then they'll be lost, or like we have people in our communities that may know about these things, but it's like, oh yeah, that was the thing I watched when I was like 20 and blah, where like we may not, because of generational differences, there are certain things we may not receive. Just because of literally just access. Like we don't get to see it in, in the stores or in like now like streaming services. But I think the answer isn't on creators, although I think it's beautiful for like Sky Hopinka and others to like make their work accessible. It's like, hey, I want you to watch it because my goal is for, my people to see their own stories told and preserved, that necessarily I want to, be compensated for this work. But I think that, I think it's also very important for larger companies to start thinking, in that space. I know it's hard because capitalism and money, but, thinking in the space of like, hey, let's try to preserve some of these things. Let's try to give access to people. So it's not just, you got to go to Lincoln Center to find the one film that, your country has made, or somebody in your country has made.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that's where the responsibility lies.
Yeah. I definitely appreciate you putting the focus on, corporations there, because you're right, it should not come down to individual creators. Because, again, capitalism, like we need to survive, we need money.
Yeah.
And I struggle with like a way to do that. Like I don't really think the solution is to make everything free, but with ads, like a lot of streaming services does. Like imagine Criterion Collection was like, oh yeah, you could watch all these, but we're gonna throw in like a Vino shampoo ad or something like that. The Vino shampoo company, I don't even know. I tuned these out. So that kind of seems tacky, but you're right. There should be a way to have both, and but it's hard, unless there's a complete change in how our country is run financially. It's like, how do you get that balance? But I definitely, despite not having a clear solution to that, I definitely think it's important for people to have access to these stories. These stories that are not in the public consciousness, or, these stories that are focused on non-white people. So
I mean, it's, it's important, and even, I mean, it's super important, and even just like there's so many like angles to like preservation, even like some things we found with like, we discovered like a small film here and there, and like even just like getting subtitles for that, you can't even like hear the thing. I think when we saw, what was the film we watched?
Losing Ground was an issue, just because it was done in, what was it, the 70s?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a short film done in the 70s. I forgot the director's name, but it's a really good story. But quality,
couldn't even hear it.
Yeah, you couldn't really hear like the sound too well, and it's like it's not the fault of the director, it's the fault of the streaming service.
The preservation.
Yes.
Yeah, film preservation is huge.
Yeah, and the fact that the service doesn't provide subtitles, for them. Like not everything will have subtitles. And I'm like, but why? Like some of these things are so old and like you kind of need it, like, and I'm like, I feel like that's a disservice, because how can people can really enjoy or watch this? And it's like, I'm just trying to figure out what they're saying, and it's not even like a language barrier, issue. It's just, like nobody's thinking, people are just kind of putting the stuff up and they're not really thinking about, well, how are people going to receive this,
And this is across streaming services, not just
accessibility is
one place. It's a common issue,
Yeah.
But yeah,
accessibility definitely needs to be part of that conversation as well, for sure. For people who have hearing issues, like what they can't appreciate that movie now.
Oh wow,
exactly.
So,
but
no, great question. Hard to answer. Maybe as we continue, this series, we'll kind of get more educated about that, because reservation is very, very important, and the ability to see art should not be, for the privileged, I think.
Or not only, or not only the privileged. But well, thank you guys for joining us. We hope you check out the film in the link in the description, and we hope you take the time to respond to some of the things, some of our reflections, and put some of your own, down maybe in the comment section, and like and subscribe. That's what the people say. Is that?
I'm Jonathan, and this is. I don't think we even said our names, but we're not.
You're right.
Yes, Tyrone.
I'm Nora.
And we're Black Collar Art House.
Thank you for coming.
So have a great night, guys.
Yes.